too small. I didn't use them in such a long time. And we went to look at them, and as I said, we had this horrible smile that almost hurt our faces from one ear to another, being so delighted to be free and on the street and among the people. It was the most beautiful moment in my life.
What happened the rest of the day and the
I
subsequent
told you,
days?
we went house hunting with the group of other kids and found this house, individual house, not apart. And there were us, maybe a dozen of us, trying to share this one house. But we were so used living for all those years in the ghetto and then in hiding with group of people, the idea of just the two of us, having an apartment for the two of us, was incomprehensible. So we got few other kids that survived and came to town from the mountains, and we went house hunting.
When did you find out about your mother and brother?
Father was with us, and the last few days mother was with us, about a week before. And Lucia was with us, my mother's sister. We all gathered there in this hiding place, but this was just few days prior
And your brother was there too?
What, please?
Your brother moved in also?
Everybody. Everybody was there. And my parents rented someplace horse and buggy and pack whatever there was to pack, which wasn't, of course, much. And they went to Drohobych, and I stayed with him. And we went to the office, paid 2 rubles. A soldier gave it to us. And we signed up and were married.
About what date was that? When was the liberation in that area?
August the 8th. And we went on August the 9th to sign up.
1944. So the war was still going on in much of...
the other part of Poland was still occupied. We had the Russians with us. And then when they liberated the rest of Poland, we moved to Poland, you know. And from Poland, they start having pogroms again on university grounds, the students. So we decided this is not for us. So Dan and I, what little it was, pack everything in 2 rucksacks. I was 6 months pregnant at the time. We crossed through the night illegally the Carpathian Mountains to Czechoslovakia. From there, they took us on American transport on the trucks to Linz, to a Durstganglager.
It's in Austria?
Yeah, in Austria. From Linz, we went to Munich. From Munich, the 2 of us went to Stuttgart, and he signed for the Technische Hochschule. but you will get the details.
What condition were you in at the time of liberation?
I was skinny. I imagine I was okay. I don't know. I don't think I needed medical assistance of any. Oh, when you're young, you can conquer so much. And we really were not starved.
Did you go back to your hometown at all before
Oh,
leaving for
yes.
Germany?
Short afterwards, I went to Sambor. I went to Sambor to see if somebody survived. And no one was there. And we stayed there like about 2 days, I believe, over one night. Then Dan and I went to Stri because we left with some Gentile people, some Persian carpets that they adopted. And I at least wanted one of them for the family. So I went and I got one carpet.
What happened to the rest of your family belongings and apartment and all that?
It was a nice division between the Russians and the Germans. They enjoyed it. And our village is still nationalized in Ukraine. We keep on writing to this ambassador here in Washington, Ukrainian ambassador, when they will come with the laws that return the property to proper owners. And just like you heard from him, the same goes for us.
How did the locals in your neighborhood respond when they saw you come back to your hometown?
They were not overjoyed. First, because we knew who done what, okay? Secondly, because they got lots of corroboration from both Poles and the Ukrainian. Second, those that had some of our possession were very unhappy about this because they had to give it back. We finally settled like silverware dividing in half, you know. It was set for I don't know how many, I think 12. And so we got 6 setting, they got 6 setting. And other things also.
How did the Soviet troops deal with the people who had been freed? Did they deal with you at all? Was there any kind of a system going on there?
Not in the beginning. They were more concerned with those who were adverse to their regime than people who done something, collaborated with the Germans over something as meaningless as Jews.
So you were all more free to just do what you wanted to do?
Well, I tell you, with few exceptions, we learned not to expect anything of anybody from anybody except ourselves. And maybe our children. And this also with reservation.
When you and your husband went to Stuttgart, where did the rest of your family go?
The rest of my family, the only ones that were left, was my parents, and my brother was still a little
Right.
boy, pretty much.
What did they all do?
They went to Drohobych. Luśka went to Krakow, right away to Poland. And this is the extent of my family.
Well, continue on with your new life then in Germany. How long did you stay there?
Well, in Germany, for about, in Stuttgart, I think about 3.5 years. My husband, as I said, went to school. I was expecting the baby. When I came inquiring for a place to deliver the baby in a hospital, they told me to come in 6 months when I am due, just about any minute. Then would go hire himself to German farmers as a worker, not for money, but for produce. We didn't want to stay in another camp. You know, I was averse to it. You go with your dishes to get your meals. This is not the way to live. So we had a room in German's family house. There were just the two of them, and the government took one of the rooms from them, which we occupied. And then I had my baby in a Hebammenschule, which is a school for the midwives. Because, as I mentioned, there was no room. I had to wait 6 months to get to the hospital. And
Which child was that?
the
first
oldest,
one?
the one that paints,
Her name?
Anna.
Anna.
I had Anna, and we stayed there for about 3.5 years, then got his degree, and we signed up for immigration, which finally came. And we were brought to Milwaukee, sponsored by Jewish Family Service. We live in Milwaukee, and both of us were working, and I went to Red Feather school, preschool, because she was only 3.5. I work for, let's see, for a plastic company folding plastic covers. Everything at the time in America was covered with plastic. Then I work at Frank Sausage Company washing the casings for sausage. Then I went, finally I got to Rhea Manufacture Company as a presser. After that job, and then worked for Alice Chalmers, I finally got the job on a production line of generators.
Did your parents stay behind in Europe?
My parents came half a year later after we arrived to the United States. They came and joined us.
Okay, you've arrived in Milwaukee and you're working these different
Yes, we
jobs?
have arrived in Milwaukee, and they put us in a rooming house. Apropos, when we arrived in New York, my daughter and myself were photographed as newcomers with the flags. It's not in this album. It is?
We'll find the pictures later.
Well, anyway, as newcomers to this country. And of course, we were very impressed with ourselves. When they brought us to Milwaukee, we found this in the newspaper, our pictures that was sent from New York to Milwaukee. We came to Milwaukee because somebody there signed that they can employ Dan as engineer, except that Milwaukee was heavy industry, not in line of electronics. So uh, for a while, it was terribly humiliating because every Wednesday, one of us had to go to Jewish Family Service to pick up a check for 20-some dollars. And when my family didn't give, certainly never took anything from anybody. So every Tuesday I cry like clock because he didn't want to go. He was sending me. And I didn't want to go. I was sending him. And of course, guess who won? I went. And as I said, pretty soon we got a job. Dan got his job repairing television sets at Samsung. And I got job in the factory for 75 cents an hour, doing all those jobs that I mentioned prior to it. And
How did the people in the Jewish community there respond to you
we
as immigrants?
had very little contact outside the other newcomers, except going to the park with Anna after work. I have met few ladies. One of them, a magnificent person, Sarah Schwartz. She spoke Yiddish, I spoke German, but we communicated and we have became the best of friends. And she wrote our applications for us because none of us really could spell it. And we came without the knowledge of language. And she wrote for an application for the jobs. And she really helped us assimilate into life in the United States. We live in Milwaukee. She is still alive. They were older than us. He died, and she is in old people home. She has children. But we lived there for 3.5 years, approximately. From there, we moved to New Jersey, where then got the job with RCA. There I met more people and closer to my age, and I kind of pick up the language and start reading in English. It was both the television and books were extremely helpful. I got some familiarity with the language watching television because you hear the words and you see the action and you presume that it corresponds to the action, the words. So it was a very helpful tool to learning English. Then I started in Milwaukee going to school, for newcomers. Also to learn how to drive a car. It was essential. And by the time we landed in Arizona, I decided that I needed a help. I was suffering tremendously, not only from hatred that nobody gave a damn about, but also anxiety attacks, tremendous anxiety attacks. And by this time I have 3 children. The youngest one was just a few months old. And I had no money to go to the doctor, psychiatrist. I also developed ulcer at that
The
time.
hatred, what form did that take?
What?
When you said you had this great feeling of hatred, what
Well,
was
I took it on myself. That's why I got the ulcer. You see, it all was suppressed. It had no outlet. No one really who care if they are hated or not, or that knew about this.
Who was the hatred really directed
Towards
towards?
the Germans, and it's funny thing that it did not exist, got totally suppressed when I lived in Germany for those 3 years. That's a human nature, accommodates itself. And I decided that my best way is by going to school, to University of Arizona, taking psychology. My logic was, if I learn about people, I learn about myself. If I learn to understand them and forgive them, so to speak, maybe I can forgive myself, because I blame myself for everything in this world. And as a matter of fact, when I spoke to someone, I always said, I'm sorry. And they said, my God, what you sorry about? But I felt responsible somehow. So I went to school. My first exam, I couldn't take written exam like everybody else. I had to make appointment for Saturday with the teacher to give me an exam, verbal exam, in his office, so I could pass the course. Then we moved from there, from Arizona, to San Jose. I continued at the University of San Jose. And then it got too much. Every time I study and I ask the kids, even without studying, I would say, kids go outside, because one was 3, the other one was 4. The last 2 I had 1 year apart. They said, why, Mommy, do you have to study for school? I start feeling guilty about that. Figure out this defeats its own purpose, you know. I tried to do it at night after he came from work. It just didn't work. So I dropped it.
Were you able to find any help from, let's say, the Jewish community?
I don't go to anybody for help.
Did you
Not
associate
if
with
I can
other
help it.
survivors, other immigrants who might
No,
understand?
not us. Absolutely not. So anyway, as you see, we survive. And as you see, my husband prosper. And I can play a lady of leisure.
Well, how do you suppose, maybe you've explained it a little bit, how were you different after the war compared to who you were before? How did that war period change you?
Oh, tremendously. To begin with, I got older and smarter. And before the war, I was a devil on wheel. And after the war, I was afraid of my own shadow. It's as simple as that.
What would you want other people to learn from this whole story?
A, that everybody is the same. They might differ in color of the skin, they might differ in their profession, the level of intellect, but they are the same. They have the same desire to live, to prosper, to love, to be loved. And that's number one. And the most important thing, that hatred doesn't harm so much others as it harms you. It warps your entire psyche.
Well, how have you been able to change that for yourself over the years, all this anxiety?
By trying to look forward in life and not back. It happened, couldn't do anything about this, it wasn't my fault, and I was lucky to survive. It was sheer luck. There was nothing divine about this. I was not meant to fulfill any particular role just because I am a